Hey everybody, KC here. So in case you missed a part, I've been running my conversation from the Organic Produce Summit with Robby Cruz, VP of Produce at Target, and Patrick Haines, VP of Produce at UNFI. In case you've missed a piece or you want to watch the whole thing as one organic, no pun intended, conversation, here it is for you. It's about a half an hour long. I thought it was really, really interesting. I learned a lot, and I hope you will too. So in 2023, as I understand the numbers, organic produce sales were up 1.6%. Volume was down just a tiny bit, 0.1%. That, I think we're seeing inflation work there. At the same time, conventional produce pretty much tracked along the same way. Sales were up 1.9%. Volume was up 0.1%. So it was pretty much flat. So let's start here. I'm curious, how do your company's numbers and trends sort of track with what was going on in the broader industry during 2023? Robby?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I would say, Kevin, we're a little bit opposite of what that was there. So when you look at our sales mix of organic sales, we've grown 200 basis points over every year for the last 3 years. And so 1 out of every $5 right now at Target in produce is spent on an organic item. And so we're continuing to see what that trend is looking like as it continues to grow. One of the big things that helps us out is, like, when you think about our digital platform, our guest actually is buying more organics on the digital platform than they are actually within our store, which is interesting. The apple category, 1 out of every $4 is an organic apple that is bought on the digital platform. And if you think about the banana category, actually 33% of our sales of bananas is actually sold as organic. And so we're continuing to see that grow. We're going to see it as we continue to move forward. And we look at the assortment that we have in our stores and figure out how do we integrate organics more to the conventional platform.
Odd. In the stores, they're saying, gee, how can we do as well in organic produce as they're doing online, which is not usually the conversation that takes place.
Yep.
Patrick, how about at UNFI?
Yeah, hi. Again, good morning. Good morning, Kevin and Robby. At UNFI, we operate mostly on a wholesale basis, and our numbers track pretty close to what you said as far as the industry. We are seeing definitely like some high points within the organic industry part, because we serve a wide variety of customers, and a good portion of those customers are what I would say are very organic forward. In some cases, cooperative grocers that have 100% of their product is organic. They're seeing very good activity in those stores, as well as other retailers that are very high end or have other organic, very much organic forward activities. So those retailers are doing well with the organic, and we're seeing that. On the other side, we're seeing with more of the conventional groceries, we're seeing a strong interest in making the organic more visible. I think maybe 2 years ago, UNFI introduced Wild Harvest as a way of branding some of the organic products. We've been expanding that supply and expanding the line. And a good number of our retail customers that are in the more conventional space have really started to focus on putting that in. We've gotten several new customers over the last just 6 months, who have turned that into a focus as well. So we're not seeing like a huge increase, but we are seeing some good momentum in the organic category.
I want to circle back to how you talked about your numbers. It's actually a one-word question, and it's a question that I'm sure you're thinking about as he talks about those numbers, and every retailer in the room is talking about. Why? What are you doing differently that's driving that kind of traffic, sales, both online and in the store, making organic, working against the national numbers? You must be doing. There's got to be a secret sauce that you're bringing to it.
Yeah, let me tell everybody the secret sauce.
You won't tell, will you?
But
there's got to be a why that's not proprietary.
There is. I would say, when you look at our digital sales, it's probably a little bit higher than most other retailers that are out there. And so you have a different avenue to be able to bring organic product to life on our platform. And so I think you'll significantly see a difference of how we present organics versus conventional on that digital platform. And then if you think about just the guest at Target, it's a younger demographic guest that we have. That guest is looking to have more food as medicine. And so they want that transparency, and they're telling us through insights is that they want to see more organics within our stores.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that the story you're telling is resonating with your customer. Equally interesting that your retail customers, the ones who are telling the story better, are actually having more of an impact than the ones who aren't telling the story. There was just a piece in the New York Times a couple of days ago. I referenced it this morning on Morning Newsbeat, and it asked the question. I mean, the question was, is organic produce worth the higher price? Spoiler alert: the Times, after spending 800 to 1,000 words, their conclusion was maybe it depends. So all the news fit the print. Let me tell you. I love the Times. I shouldn't pick on them. Anyway, but what that says to me is that even after all these years, the story of organic produce is not being told well enough, so that question continues to come up. So I would ask both of you, and this is something you're trying to communicate to your retailers, especially the ones who are not particularly doing a good job in organic. How do we tell the story more effectively? Because I know at the e-commerce session that took place at 8 o'clock this morning, storytelling was almost everything they talked about.
I got a chance in the last couple of days to view and visit some really nice farm operations close by too. And as I've come to work with UNFI and I see the legacy of like Albert's Organics and NorCal and the whole United Natural Foods team, I'm learning more and more myself and educating myself more about what's entailed here in this organic space. And the New York Times article kind of hinted at this, or it talked about it some, was that I think for a conventional retailer and a very conventional customer who's at an entry point of the organic means something specific about the fruit or the vegetable. As you get more integrated and as you get to know the category more, and as they interviewed the scientists and others, the aspects around regenerative farming, taking care of the soil, taking good care of the people who are working on the farm, and with specific respect to not having so much exposure to pesticides and things, that all becomes a very inclusive discussion of what is meant by organic. I think the millennials, the Gen Z people get it, they understand it, they know it. I think a lot of other people need to be educated more. Just in the discussions we've had in preparation for this, has helped me kind of identify a very large gap in what we can provide to some of the retailers to help them communicate to their customers, to get them moving farther along that track of understanding. Because the more you know, the more you want organics.
Right. It was interesting. One of the e-commerce presenters this morning was it's Good Eggs, and he was talking about the story they tell. So I have my phone, I can go on, look on a site, and they really do a really good job of communicating. What makes an heirloom tomato different than a regular tomato, and here's what you need to know about the growers. And I think that that is the most compelling way to tell the organic story, is by providing that kind of information.
Yeah, I think one thing that we've gone through this industry is, you think back 5-10 years, there was a significant cost difference between conventional and organic, and I don't think we're getting enough credit to say what you as growers are doing out there. This gap has really closed a lot, right? We're thinking about what varieties where yields are better, how does storage work, what are the inputs that we're actually putting in there, and I think we need to do a better job of telling that to the guests, like telling those grower stories that we're doing this for you, and then it's really advertising what that price looks like. I think in the past, you would maybe say it's double the price, and now it's very, very similar. And so we need to get that trial to the guest and then have them utilize and feel and taste all those premium varieties that they're growing out there.
And yet, during the past few years, I'm sure inflation has had its impact on your businesses and how you come to market. There wasn't a recession, but there was certainly a recessionary mindset, which may be just as bad. How have you sort of made adjustments within that environment to continue to drive sales and address consumer concerns and, frankly, shortage of money in a lot of cases?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people know at Target we have a much smaller format store. We do have some of these super Targets where we have a couple hundred of those, but a majority of our footprint is much smaller. One table maybe has about 20 feet of open case. We've actually gone an opposite direction where when we look at a conventional product and also an organic item, we're limited in space. And so instead of touching that twice, we always think about what is the inputs. Is the produce clerk now having to bring out 2 boxes? And so there's labor into that. And they're having to touch 2 different items. And so we've actually started to convert over where we only carry organic items that are there. And so I think doing that, we're seeing great feedback from the guest. The guest continues to tell us they want more. And so we have to be a little bit more strategic on what space are we going to give it to it, and then where are we going to continue to carry organic and where are we going to carry conventional.
It's interesting because in a lot of ways, when you present the 2 items, you do create you create a choice that you don't necessarily have to, and maybe even create some confusion or uncertainty in the mind of the consumer. But if you only present one organic, you're actually kind of you're shaping their decision in a way that maybe makes a lot more sense.
A lot of people would say, though, is truly from its cost, right? So people would say the reason why is it's going to be cost. But if you think about the inputs of labor, think about the inputs of shrink, think about how many times we have to touch it, then that's actually paying for the offset of that organic versus conventional. And so now you are about making, so your variable profit at the end of the day is just as much as you were making on conventional, because now we're only touching it once, and now we're turning the product faster in our stores.
Yeah, I think you might have the ability to do that in some select stores, some select markets, et cetera. With a real conventional retailer, I think they have to be careful on that, and to be able to, especially in today's times, to be sure that their customer is getting communicated well the value of what's being out there. I've had a little bit of experience where in my past life where we've made an adjustment like that on an item, and got some pushback from customers who assumed that the price was higher because it was organic. Yep. And so you have to be careful of that as well.
You could actually put an organic, if the price is the same and you think the quality of the organic product is better, you could actually put the organic product out and not even label it as organic, right? Because if you're in the position of actually giving them a better product and you're not creating the choice, but you are funneling their decision making towards the organic item. Or is that antithetical to the organic religion to put an item out and not say it's, I don't mean that sarcastically, is it antithetical to what the industry wants to do to put an organic item but not say it's that?
I mean, having visited farms, not just in the last couple of days, but over my career, and seeing the efforts and the challenges and the requirements that go into creating an organic product, I mean, I want the grower, I want the customer to know that product is special in most cases. I mean, in all cases that I can think of.
Yeah. If I asked you to, let me get this. It's interesting to me that you are both, you're now working for a wholesaler, but you spent a lot of your career as a retailer. You're a retailer, but you spent some of your time as a wholesaler. So I'm curious, in terms of how you deal with your current jobs and the current responsibilities you have, what you learned in your past lives that help you do a better job in the job that you have now.
I mean, having worked for, the largest, but
I didn't want to say the retailer, but Target's sitting here. So.
But having worked, sorry, Robby.
The big W.
Yeah, the big W. But having grown up, for one thing, Walmart wasn't always the largest retailer, but it became that. But because of the
it also
scale,
wasn't always in the food business.
Exactly.
And when I started reporting about this industry, Walmart didn't have grocery stores.
Exactly.
That's how old I
am. Me too. So, but with respect to that, the thing that I think that I learned most is that things are possible. You can make change. You can activate things that some people in the industry, because of their position that they've had historically, think, well, that's just the way it is, and I'm just a participant in this big machine. But coming from Walmart, where I did, we had the idea that things can change. I don't think it's only because Walmart was very large, but it was just more of a mindset. And so coming to UNFI, I have a very good sense of listening to the people and helping them execute on ideas they've had, but maybe never felt the full voice that we can make it happen.
Well, a really good retailer should play an activist role, right? I mean,
Exactly.
it is not just a really good retailer does not sit there and say, well, I'm the way station for selling other people's brands. I'm a pass-through entity. A really good retailer, which is what you guys are doing, is playing an activist role in terms of just in terms of the choices they're making, in terms of what they're buying, but in how they're shaping consumer perceptions and helping to engineer what goes into the basket.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this. One thing that I've learned from the different retailers that I've worked at is strategies are different, right? And if you kind of go in there and you think it's a cookie cutter approach, you're not gonna succeed. And so there's some retailers that are going after value, someone's gonna go after merchandising, someone's all about premium quality that's out there. And so I think it's learning from all those experiences that you've had, learning from our teams. I've had some amazing mentors throughout my 30 years of my career, and I think we as an industry have to continue to do that better, right? Understanding what happens in the stores, what happens backstage, procurement, supply chain, first mile, second mile, last mile. Like, we just don't do a good enough job of continuing to be advocates for the younger generation that's coming up there. And I think if we do that, I mean, think about this industry. It's July, we're in California, it's 80 degrees outside. Like, this is the place where I want to be. I wouldn't change my job for anything in the world. But that passion that we have, we need to continue to develop that passion for the younger generation as we move forward.
You use the word value, and one of the things that, and I think that this is especially true of smaller retailers that you're dealing with, that they often make the mistake of equating value with price. Low price, and I always think that's a mistake, because there's only a few retailers, you're one of them, that can really play the price game, right? Other than that, it seems to me that you've got to play the value game. You've got to be able to talk about the value of the product, the values of the company, the values of the companies that are manufacturing, producing the products, and talk about why the value of great organic produce on a dinner plate is greater than that of a Big Mac, fries, and a Diet Coke, which may cost less money in the moment, but actually is much more problematic in the bigger picture. So how do you communicate the difference between price and value, and how value is more important?
Yeah, I mean, value, or when you think about value, price is a piece, but it's a small piece, I would say. Right. It's going to be, like, what is the variety that we're buying? Often, if you were to talk to any of our buyers, and hopefully you guys are hearing this out there as you're talking to my buyers, but we want to give the guest the best at-home eating experience. And are you proud about what you're buying? If your mom went in or your grandma went in and is buying that apple or buying those grapes or buying those berries, would you say that you are the buyer for Target that's buying that for around the country? And so be very specific on what's the varieties that we're growing. Is it having that best at-home eating experience? If we over-deliver on all of that, and then all of a sudden our guests will become our brand ambassadors. And that's what we want. We want people to walk into Target and say, I had the best blueberries that I've ever had, and they'll become that brand ambassador. And that, to me, is the value that we're looking for versus just always going after price.
But it's also, somebody wanted to applaud that out here. But it's also important. Listen, I mean, all the fast feeders out there, over the last couple of months, we've seen that, a year ago they were all saying, oh, this is great, we can raise prices as much as we want. And now they're rediscovering their value meals, right? And talking about how that's the best value for the consumer. And it seems to me that that is a competitive argument that the retail, the supermarket industry in general, and specifically this category, I think has to push back against much more aggressively than it does. To say that it's a value meal in name only. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great point. And again, serving a large number of different retailers, as UNFI does, and Robby brought up a great point from his experience in wholesaling, and thank you, because I'm learning it as I go too, with a lot of good help, is that each retailer does kind of have their own strategy. And I think we need in my role and the role of our other team members to really help influence and shape those strategies of those retailers. We may not be, financially invested in them, but they're financially invested in making them as competitive as they can be, and they have to have that value.
By the way, you are
proposition.
financially invested because they go out of business. You have fewer customers.
No, we can't be successful without them by any means. But to understand their strategy and to help inform their strategy, to help them communicate better this value equation. We have some great examples. I mean, one who's here today, I haven't met him yet, so I hope to see them soon, from Natural Grocers Vitamin Cottage, that has a very clear mission statement. I was so impressed when I visited their stores. Very clear mission statement around providing healthy products for your family, for your body, and they won't carry anything that doesn't really convene exactly with that mission statement. That's kind of rare to be so specific and so clear and so upfront. But when you do that, I think it really helps set the table and set the path for being successful.
I'm curious, when you both in your jobs and at your different organizations think about innovation, I'm curious how you frame that in your own mind, and to what degree does technology play a role in that?
Yeah, I mean, innovation is the fun part of a buyer's job, right? You're always looking for something new. I think innovation's definitely different as you look at the different categories. Juice, healthy snacking, salads, it's much easier to be innovative because you're trying something different. As you think about like core commodities of like citrus or apples and berries, then it truly comes down to what's the differentiation between all those varieties. And so that's where, for me, as I'm challenging those buyers, it's like, yeah, there's not going to be this new navel orange out there, but is it a specific variety? Is it a specific region that you're growing? Is it the growing practices that vendor has? That is actually the differentiation in that flavor profile that we're looking for. That's the kind of innovation they should be looking for. And then as you think about just even on the convenience side of the business, the guest is continuing to be more and more timed or taxed for time, right? You think about kids and you either got sports or dance or recitals or something. And so I think part of that value equation that we just asked you is actually helping them have more convenience to be able to still cook for their kids and their family, but also be able to help them with time.
I see innovation and a lot of innovation in products and product varieties, genetics, et cetera, is very important, but also looking at the innovations in the supply chain, in things that we can do within the process. Everybody here working together to reduce friction in the thing, exactly as our previous speaker discussed, with the food waste and others, moving the product in a timely basis as quickly as we can, kind of making that whole process go as well as it can, and finding technology and innovative ways of doing that, I think, is an important piece of our business.
We don't have a ton of time left, but I do have a couple of quick questions, so I'm hoping for a couple of quick answers. The room is filled with vendors. You're both on the retail side. If you had one message to send to the vendors in terms of what you need from them that you're not getting, what would it be?
I think the best ones are doing it already, but it's a plan to have really great surety of supply and enough steps in place to mitigate the risks that are coming and that we have, because the customers really rely on that product all the time, and they expect it and they need it. It's a huge challenge, but I think that to provide the best service level to our customers is the biggest single opportunity we have.
I'd say transparency. We need to have more transparency with our key vendor partners out there and understand, what does your multi-year strategic plan look like? How does that tie into the retailer that you're at? And then how do we work together to be able to continue to eliminate costs but still bring the surprise and delight to the guest?
Is it critical to share that level of transparency with the shopper?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think transparency goes both ways, right? I'm sure as a grower, they're going to want to understand, like, where are we going? What does our remodel schedule look like? What does our new stores of the future look like? How do we continue to help them increase their category as we move forward? But that transparency has to be back and forth. I think the guest definitely wants the transparency as, how did this product make it here? And what we see is a lot of the younger generations want that transparency. Like, they want to understand, how did that product grow? How did that product actually get from Washington all the way to Florida? It's amazing still out there that people don't realize that apples are not grown year-round, but it's kind of scary.
You made a comment just almost parenthetically a few minutes ago about it being 90 degrees outside. It is in fact about 64 degrees outside here.
It's 115 in Arizona,
Oh,
so it feels like
listen,
fantastic
I was
out here.
amazed. I've talked to a bunch of people who from Monterey, and they're talking about how hot it is. I'm on the East Coast where it's like 95 degrees and 195% humidity, so I'll trade you. But the quick question, how do you factor in the whole notion of climate change and the impact that's having on growing seasons and product availability? How do you factor that? Are you constantly sort of changing your expectations and your business plan to account for that?
It's an ongoing challenge, and we see growers popping up with growing areas, new growing areas that we've never really considered, and we've had growing areas that have been absolutely reliable and dependable for generations that all of a sudden are much, much, much less reliable. So it's factoring into all of our discussions with our suppliers all the time, with the sourcing team, getting ahead, what's next? I mean, that's really the biggest question. It's a big challenge for us.
They say Northern Michigan Pinot Noir is going to be the coming thing.
It's very possible. It's very possible. I wouldn't put it past at all.
Climate change.
The same thing. I think diversity for each of these growers. If they've always grown in a certain area of the country, they need to be more diverse, look at other states, even look at the commodities that they're actually growing in there, right? If all of a sudden now the nights are warmer and the days are hotter, then we're going to have to look at what commodity are they actually growing there and could they move to find other space.
Yeah. Last question, which is when we all come back here in 2030, God willing, and we're talking, we're focusing on what the hot, no pun intended, trend is at the moment. I'm curious what you think it might be, and I know change happens so fast. Thinking that far out is almost impossible. But if you had to guess, what do you think we'll be really focusing on then?
I think that the whole concept of soil health, regenerative activities, is going to be a really big deal, not just because it's maybe cool and maybe neat, but I think it's going to be required because the pressure that the climate change is putting onto the planet and into the growing areas, we've got to have a stronger soil base in order to help support some of that change.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think when you still think about digital and the ease for that guest, I think that's going to continue to grow. Believe it or not, I have 4 older kids. Youngest is 20. We got 3 grandkids coming around.
Oh my God.
But when I talk to my kids, are 20, 22, 25, and 27 years old, when they shop for groceries, it's all on their phone. It's not going into the grocery store. They're not looking for what that is. And so as that demographic continues to get older, the new ones coming in are going to be looking even for more of that kind of content. And so I think we got to stay further ahead what that looks like. As we look at it from Target's point of view is, what does our stores look like of the future? How are we going to continue to make sure that we have all these drive-up spaces and these delivery options that we have? We have a store in Hawaii that actually has 40 drive-up spaces. People are literally doing their orders when they land on the plane when they get to Hawaii just to go pick it up at a Target before they go to their Airbnb or go to their hotel. And so
Really?
You have to think about that's now, and if we think 3, 5, 10 years down the road, what does that look like? How do we look at the coolers in their back room, and how do we have that type of holding power?
And that challenge is even more difficult for you guys because you might believe that 1,000%, but then you have to convince your retailers of making those kinds of infrastructural changes that small independent retailers sometimes have a difficult job of embracing.
And actually, Kevin, that's one thing that I've learned coming to UNFI. And one reason why I came was to help make those retailers as competitive as they possibly can be. And there's definitely a gap with some of the digital experience that they're able to offer right now. And as a company, UNFI is trying to help bring them along. They're offering some services, some media network, UNFI Media Network, and some services to help them get a much stronger online presence because you have to have it. I mean, it is a requirement in today, and it'll be more of a requirement tomorrow.
I think you guys are right on. I think that the notion that at a certain point, our children are going to say, oh, now I'm going to shop like my parents did when they were my age is a foolish assumption and is almost certainly going to be wrong. I also have to say my kids are 38, 35, and 30. Nobody's married and nobody's pregnant, so I have to go home and tell them to get on this stick because they are clearly underperforming. Before I wrap this up and ask you to give these guys a tremendous round of applause, I want to piggyback on something that Nick said, which is it's about 10 years ago that Matt Seeley came up to me at a conference we were both at on Cape Cod, of all places, and told me about this thing he was planning to do called the Organic Produce Summit, and said, you know, I'd love you to be a part of it. And I have been thrilled and quite frankly privileged to have been here every year that this thing has existed. The only year we missed was the COVID year. I'm not saying goodbye because I'm not going anywhere. But I also wanted to point out that it's Matt's vision that has really, and the rest of the team's vision that has really driven this all these years. And I think that they deserve a tremendous round of applause while you give these guys a round of applause as well.